welcome to the Carpcast.
Hello, mate.
Did we call you Spug? Did we call you Mike Redfern? Like, where did Spug come from? A school nickname or something in fishing?
Yeah, yeah, it was a school nickname. It's nothing exciting, believe me.
Okay.
Yeah, I wished it was. It was to do with some lads who lived, just muting my phone. Um, they lived from Middlesbrough. They come from Middlesbrough and they lived two doors down from us. And they used to call sparrows spuggies.
Okay.
And we used to throw birdseed at the end of the garden, living in Norfolk, because you had fields at the back of your garden. And anything that landed, we'd try and shoot it with air rifles,
Yeah.
which is probably not PC these days, but it didn't really matter because we never hit anything.
Yeah.
And one day a sparrow landed, and one of them went, "Hey, look, it's a spuggy." I went, "What's that?" And just started guffawing. And someone said, "Well, you're a spuggy," and that was Spuggy, and then it got Spug. So I really wanted it to be a story where I drank 5 bottles of JD, knocked out 15 lions, 15 birds from behind, and then I was King Spug. But unfortunately, it's Sparrow. So it's nothing flash.
So is that where you originate your childhood? Was that the Norfolk area? Is that where you got into fishing and stuff?
Yeah, when I was seven, Mum bought us one of those Woolworths kits with
Yeah.
a Jet 702 reel in it, a little white rod, a net, and some very blunt hooks.
Yeah, I got
So
the same at 9. Yeah,
yeah,
my dad said it'd be a phase, and here we are, 40 odd years later. Yeah,
my mum said he'll never do it. I don't know if I would have been diagnosed with things when I was a kid, but she said he hasn't got the patience. He's not going to do it. Blah, blah, blah. But I did.
yeah. It's so apparently, I mean, we have data on everything these days, don't we? But 1 in 9, 1 in 3 children will take to fishing if they're introduced to it. So if they get a chance to go, and for me, I mean, it was something that was not connected really in any way with me. There was no sort of close family or friends that went fishing or anything. I just moved to an house that had a farmer's pond, a field away, and the local kids on the street, that's where they went. And the first time I went, I was addicted. So there was no background for it. I was just one of them 1 in 3 kids, I guess, and it's been with me for life. Probably saved me life a few times. I would suggest.
Mm.
So it is, it's not going to be too serious a podcast this, but it is important to let kids
You
try.
got the wrong person for one of them.
Is it? Yeah, it's important to let kids try. So, what about the carp fishing then? When did that sort of kick in? Was it normal fishing first, canals, rivers, and stuff, or?
Yeah, we started off float fishing for anything that we could catch, roach, perch, stuff like that. And I think it was about 11. We went down the local mere,
Yeah.
and we'd catch like 60 little fish a day, and it was great. But one day my dad turned up and he went, "You're fishing for the wrong fish. There's a bloke down there who's got 4 pound tench in his net," because dad had walked off because
Yeah.
didn't deal with as well. I think we sent him around the twist. And I said, "What are you on about 4 pound tench? I've caught 18 fish on the same maggot, which I had. I mean, the maggot was see-through at the end, it was just a
Yeah.
bit of skin. So anyway, we started, let's go for these tench. And so we read up on it, what we could find. There wasn't a lot. I think we even had a Mr. Crabtree book, but it seemed like you had to rake the bottom of the lake, get some ground bait in and some sweet corn. And we didn't have a rake. My dad had, this just makes me feel really old to say this. He had a Hillman Minx car that had a shape like that, this handle that you'd put in the bottom and you could manually start it.
Yeah.
It was really old, and we got that Hillman Minx starter handle, put it on Mum's washing line. We used to throw it in and drag on the bottom, and so we got onion floats and all the rest of it. Couldn't catch one for ages, but then eventually I caught. I think it was about 13. I caught a 3 pound tench,
Yeah.
and I can do it. I can do it. And so it started on tench, and that went through to about 16, 17. Then I found beer, motorbikes, and women, so that went out the window.
Yeah.
I came back to it when I was 22. I was going out with this girl who I married for about a month, and she said, saw my fishing gear there. So why don't we go fishing? You know, instead of you going down a pub and getting so drunk you're cross-eyed again. So we started fishing. We just float fishing,
Hmm.
found bits of ham under trees on a little local lake that had some carp in it. I equaled the lake record with a 10-pounder, and I
Hmm.
thought, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I want a bigger one, and then let's go on to boilies. So about 23 years old, we're getting into boilies, and we're starting to learn from there how to, hopefully how to catch something bigger. And I think I was a couple of years later, I had a 17 and a half pounder. I just thought that was Moby Dick. It was,
What year?
incredible.
What year was this? Would you say?
About 94.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was.
First 20 came in 96. First English 20 came in 96.
Yeah.
So,
N
yeah, that's when we got.
nearly the same as me. I was catfishing a bit younger, but I lived up north. There was no 20s, so there weren't many. It was a couple of lakes, and obviously I was pre-driving age and that. But I didn't actually catch a 20 till I moved down south to Bedfordshire, which is actually where I was born. But I was brought up north. But um,
Yeah.
it was Woburn Sands Pits, I think. So have you always lived in Norfolk? Did you move around?
Yeah, we got here when I was 4, and I was here till I got a job at Solar, which was at the end of 98. I was there in Kent for 3 years, came back to Norfolk. I was there um, for a while, and then I think it was about 2014. I was driving lorries for Co-op, and our depot shut in Thetford, and they offered us a chance to relocate in Thurrock.
Mhm.
So I ended up living in Southend and Rayleigh for 3 years. And I came back for 6 months. And then I got the job at Gillam's, and I went to Thailand for 2 years. And then I came back 8 years ago. I've been in Norfolk ever since.
Got you. So maybe it's from Conning Brook, which we'll get onto, but I don't know why, but in my head from reading the magazines and stuff from years ago, you were sort of Essex, Kent area, but that would make sense if you were sort of working around there. And Rayleigh, there's a famous fishing company from Rayleigh, isn't there?
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I was Southend, I think for about a year and a half, and then Rayleigh for a year and a half. And then I knew I was on my way to Thailand. So, then I quit the job and had 5 months fishing for a big common in Essex before I
Yeah. Where was that?
left for Thailand.
How
That
was
was
it? The Go on, you tell me.
I think Ermintrude or Germintrude, a 55 pounder,
What was the
and it
lake
was
called?
well, we called it in my second book Old McDonald's.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if I should. I don't know. I don't know if its name's out there, but it's
I
sort of
don't
out
think it.
there.
I don't think it is. So don't say it because it's not what I was thinking you were going to say. So but
Yeah, but it was
yeah,
sort of somewhere around Boreham.
yeah. I was thinking you were going to go for like Dippy or something like that. One of them from
Yeah,
the.
no, yeah, no, it wasn't. But um, it was getting bigger, and it got caught a couple of 3 times a year. And I think, other than fish that we don't know about, Con's fisheries or whatever, I think it was at the time the biggest common that was true blue, a proper one,
Yeah, yeah,
and that would have been good because obviously I could have matched that with the mirror I had years, two-tone. It would have been nice to have caught at the time the biggest mirror and the biggest common.
yeah. So we'll obviously Conning Brook held for people that don't know this. I know we have a few younger listeners. So Conning Brook was an extremely famous lake because it held the British record, a fish called two tone, and you did a stint on there, and it was a bit of a who's who on there, sort of in the daily. Jackson was on there for a long time, and I remember reading in the mags and stuff, looking at the stories. It looked like a good fun place to fish there. Like there was the barbecues, the piss ups, and whatever.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we enjoyed it at the time, but as carp fishing has evolved, and now we're in the land of Instagram anglers and massively stocked lakes with thousands of 30s, 40s, and 50s. It was so different then. There was 4 or 5 50s in the country that we knew about, perhaps the odd one we didn't, maybe, Harrow and Cons fisheries. And it was a 30 was hard work to catch, 40s weren't that many. And now you've got lakes that have got the same amount in, but
Yeah.
because it was so hard, there's a lot of alcohol consumed. And, we were just pissed all the time.
Yeah.
And it was great because the rods never went off. But, now and again they went. I think I had 4 in 72 nights, which is actually reasonable going for
Yeah.
someone that didn't know, I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, the first year I was ever on a syndicate was the Catch 22 syndicate in 97, which was sort of medium tricky. And then I went on to Kingfisher in Ling, Norfolk in 98. The end of 98, I got a job at Solar and I'm straight on to Conning Brook. Dave Lane, Lee Jackson, Paul Forward, Lockie, Lee Watson, and then Simon Burton. All these people come along. Terry had fished on there and, Gary Baze was on there and that. And it was like, can't believe this. Sitting down having a curry with the boys.
That was the era that's sort of legendary, I think.
It was, yeah.
Everyone was keen. Jacko was writing sort of in Carp Talk about it regular, wasn't he? And it was those stories and the earlier ones, the Hutchie ones, that was carp fishing for me. The epitome of carp fishing. The reason why I fell in love with it over all sort of styles of fishing was that the camaraderie. Because when, like you said, people who are only fishing in the last few years probably won't know, but those low stock lakes you didn't expect to catch, so all sorts of stuff went on.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I don't know if we're allowed to say really, but I fished on certain low stock syndicates where it was a banning offence to reel your rods in if you went to the shop, let alone the pub or a night out. And obviously we don't condone that sort of thing anymore. But it's kind of how it was. There was so much time and nothing happening. I mean, fish lakes that didn't do a bite for a month at a time. With hardcore anglers.
I mean, we weren't bailiffed at Conning Brook. Chris Logston just let us get on with it, and we used to ring up the Indian. I can't remember if it's called Polash or the Little Raj, but we used to ring up, say, 15 curries, mate. He went, oh, it's you lot, the lake, isn't it? Yeah. And then about 2 or 3 of the workers had come with these brown bags full of Indian, and they come to Joe's Point, which was the nearest to the easy car park to get in. And people who were fishing the other side, they'd just turn their buzzers round. So in the dark, you'd see a little red light go. So that's 18 acres away. And I mean, they never went off. I think about twice they went off. We're all sitting, and we're like, you see some fat angler running around. And the only thing that happened is they swam to a wee bed, they stopped in there and got them out.
Yeah.
Never, it didn't happen.
Anyone who's done that style of fishing, they know they just go to the nearest wee bed and sit there. You almost never lose a fish if you're not on it straight away.
I think,
and there's certain lakes where you need to let them do that and then go out in the boat and get them. Like you kind of have to let them do that anyway.
I think it only happened once because once or twice, but no fish were lost or damaged. But it was, Conning Brook pretty much didn't do night bites. It was all day bites, pretty much.
Yeah.
And, so it wasn't really an issue. And that's where the drinking culture come from as well, because you could spend as long as you like getting your rods in. And as soon as you got them perfect, where's the Newcastle Brown? Or should we have red first?
Yeah. What was your story? What was your story leading up to catching the fish then? Did you know it was coming? Were you in a year where you really thought, I'm trying hard this year? Or did it just come out of the blue? Or what was it?
A little bit of all of them. Obviously, you want to catch it, but I just wanted to catch anything out of there. I couldn't catch a 30-pounder in England. And then in February 2001, I caught one in the snow, funnily enough, in Hampshire at a lake that Lockie had a ticket for. And that was 32 pound. And then we started on Conning Brook that year, 2001. My third year, I'd landed 3 at that point, 27, a 28 and a 17. The 17 common was actually the fish in Terry Hearn's first book, In Pursuit of the Largest, his first Kent Cup.
Yeah.
And there's a whole page of it, and it was that one. And then anyway, so it got to 20. We had the first weather forecast 20 degrees of the year, and I phoned up Jacko and I went, mate, I'm going in Mouldy Corner. They're shallow in there. They'll be in there. And he said, yeah, I know what you're saying, but it's a shite swim. I don't want to fish it. I said, yeah, but they'll be in there. Anyway, so I went into the mouldy corner, and it was in April, because I remember Nick Heller had come to work with us at Solar, and I remember sending him a joke text message going, oh, British record, 59, whatever. And he rang me, oh, nice one, Spug. Just kidding. He's like, you fucking idiot. So I got in there on the strength of the sun coming out. It never come out. It peed it down with rain the whole weekend. And just as I was leaving on the Sunday, the sun came out, the weather cleared, and it was warm.
Yeah.
And Lockie turned up and he fished the bay, which was opposite. The next day at 11 o'clock, I rang up Lockie, see if he, and I actually said, mate, you're firing in mixers. You know, it's 20 degrees, they'll be on the top. He went, no, mate, I'm looking at the new British record. I mean, and that's when it took the record, first time.
Yeah.
I said, you're joking. He said, no, mate. He said, Terry Glebioska, 59.7. I said, oh, nice one. Where's he fishing? Mouldy Corner. So I'd missed it by a day, but the weather hadn't come good for that
the weather
swim.
shafted you, yeah.
So, the roll on to May, this is early April, roll on to the end of May, I had a week's holiday. Cut a long story short, I thought, right, I'm actually going to be mobile because I'm not mobile. I like to get my Wendy house up, get the barbecue set up, and just have a nice time. But I thought, no, you've got a week. And so I set up on the island, wasn't happening. And so I went all the way around to the Sedges, and I saw a fish show in front of the bay, and Pet Food Paul was in there. And I said to Pet Food, do you see that fish right in front of you? He went, no, I didn't. So I told him where it was, and he caught a 30-pound common. Right? I said, right, I'll come in after you, mate. They're obviously here. So I went to move round. Tom Banks was fishing Joe's Point, and he was looking and looking, and they were just under the surface, out just to the left of Joe's, which is in front of the bay. And I thought, I need to get in that bay when Pet Food goes. Definitely, they're out in front. So I went in there, and then Cockle, Mark Toland, the Cockle, the one who had Mary out of Raisbury 3 times. Last time he caught it, he went, Mary again? I hooked it, didn't he want it? Cockle's gone to my right, so we set up. Fish are going on above me. I see a fish show long in front of Cockle, and I went, mate, do you see that? He went, no. He flicked out 90 yards, caught white tips, 30 pounds. I'm thinking, I'm just putting people on fish here, and I've got them just jumping above me, sticking their little fins up, going, get lost, fat boy. And anyway, I was there for 5 nights with them just topping above me, and I could not buy a bite. Come at the Friday, I was going out with Lee Jackson's sister at the time, Mandy, and I phoned up Mandy, said, mate, I've got to get back down there. I've got to get in that swim. I don't know what it is. There was eggs in the weed. I don't know if they're frog spawn, fish spawn, tarantula spawn, whatever they were. There was eggs in there, and I think they were feeding on the eggs. And so I've got to get back in that swim. So I'm driving down the M20, going, I need to get that swim. I need to get that swim. Turned in the car park, cars everywhere. I thought, oh no chance. But there was a fresh wind coming over the top of the Julie Rose Stadium, going to the other side. Everyone was on the new wind. No one was in the bay. And I'm like, happy days.
Yeah.
Before I'd got there, I'd seen 3 poke their heads out on the same spots as I'd fished the week before.
Whoa. And
I'm like, they're still here. And then as I was going, I see one poke its head out. Initially, I thought it was the friendly mirror, but now I'm thinking it was two-tone. And it was 40 yards out, edge of the new weed growth, some yellow pop-ups that I'd nicked off Jacko out of his rucksack, and a little 2-ounce lead, just tap on the weed. Donk, yeah, that's fishing, little nugget of foam, you know. Solar had brought that foam out by that point. Got set up, got pissed, very pissed, and it got to 10 to 12. I had Lee Watson and Smudge with me. Bless him, Smudge has passed now with cancer. We'd had a lovely time eating lobster legs and that. I said, I don't know about you two, but I've just about had enough. They went, yeah. So I called it a day in 10 minutes. And then at midnight, I actually went, oh, fucking hell, was the last thing I need. And it was two-tone, 56.8.
Wow. And a night bite. You said it didn't really do many night bites.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we couldn't believe it. And, you know, it was funny because we were pitched up. And Lee's got the waders on, and he's gone out because there's weed everywhere, and he's put the net out. We had the head torches we had them big square batteries in, do you remember? The big round fronts, looked like miners. So Lee's in the water with this thing. I'm I was messing about, and this fish has gone in front of him out of the reach of the net. And I've gone, God, son, get scooping, get scooping. And he saw it. He knew what it was. And he
Yeah.
went, no, you're all right, mate. There's no rush. And then it come back to the left and it went in front of the net again. Oh, God, son, get scooping. He went, there's no rush. Anyway, third time of asking, in it went. And he
Yeah.
unhooked it. He weighed it. I was just running around.
There's
No, I
no
didn't believe it. Didn't believe it.
there's no better feeling, is there, when you're actually targeting a single carp like that, you know, it's, I mean, obviously on them low stock lakes, every single one of them means something, doesn't it? Because they're all hard to catch on the low stock.
Absolutely. And, you know, a 17-pounder out of Conning Brook equals a 50-pounder out of Monks, doesn't it? These days.
Exactly that, yeah. If you haven't fished them low stock lakes, you won't understand it, but it's that feeling
No,
of it's you against the fish, not
achievement.
not you against anglers. You know, everyone's in the same boat. It's bloody hard, and you're probably not gonna catch. You know,
Well,
I
that
think
was the thing, you see. There was no jealousy, there was no backbiting, there was no trouble except for me and the Gary Baze incident. And recently, a friend of mine bumped into Gary and he said, you tell that Spug he's a mad. And I wished I'd slit his throat when our little incident happened. And I was like,
well, you can't
but
drop that without telling us what
right, okay,
happened.
I will tell you. It was funny. So, you know, but every time you caught a fish, there was a party for you.
Yeah,
No one was jealous. No one was upset. I did feel a bit bad the day after I had two-tone because everyone packed down and went home because they wanted that fish. But, you know, just to finish that story off, when that went in my net, it was the second biggest fish ever landed in England because it took the record in the April. And then, so when I landed it, no one on planet Earth in England caught a bigger one than me. Only the record, Terry
yeah,
Gleb, and it was incredible. It was odd. I felt I didn't deserve it, although I kind of did deserve it. But you know, it is what it is, as they say. I was there, I was fishing for it, blah blah blah. So the Gary Baze incident, and I love Gary, and this was fun. So we're working at Solar, which was a pit of laddish behaviour.
yeah,
Some of the things that went on at Solar were just. I'll tell you a couple of stories with Mickey Slide, Nick Heller in a bit. Brilliant, just you know. So Lockie comes in and he's got this big yellow torch that's something like 1,000,000 candle watt power or something.
yeah,
I think they used to say that in them days.
yeah,
He said, take it down the brook and see how bright the beam is. So it's all right. This is after I'd had the big one. And we're fishing in the bay. Gary Baze set up in the lifebuoy swim opposite. Anyway, so me and Mandy are down there and we're drinking and drinking, and Lee Watson turns up and we're drinking and drinking. And Gary was opposite us. He spent about 2 or 3 hours wading his baits by hand, little holes in the weed and little, you know, tricks on top of them and all that stuff. And just on dark, a flock of geese come in and landed above his rods. About 40 geese, they're all sitting there in the dark. Anyway, it gets to about 10 o'clock, and I suddenly remembered I've got this torch. I wonder how bright it is. I said to like Mandy and Lee, should we say hello to Gary? And they said, yeah, it's a good idea. So I got this torch out of my rucksack and I went, and it lit up the whole of the other side, spotlight on Gary's bivvy. And these 40 geese went, and they all flew off. We were all laughing our heads off. I chucked it in the rucksack, so I passed out to sleep. Anyway, the next morning, I see Lee Watson sitting on top of this little mound looking for fish. About 5:30, I woke up. Skull was banging. And I said, how you getting on, mate? He said, Basie's got the arse for you, mate. I said, well, what's that? What's up? He said, well, can't you remember what you done last night? I said, I haven't got a clue. I don't even know what day of the week it is. He said, you shone that torch on him, didn't you? And all them geese took off and you ruined his swim and all that hard work he put in, sort of thing. So, oh no. And it's one of the rules, isn't it? The 3 written rules. Larking about is compulsory. Fish care, paramount, but never do anything that puts someone else out of a bite. And I'd done that and I knew it. I said, right, I'm going to see him. So I walked round to see Gary and he's sitting there. His face was red. You could almost see steam coming out of his ears. He was so, this was a lake where you didn't do that. This is day, you know.
Yeah.
I walked in his swim and said, Gary, it's completely my fault. I'm so sorry. I said, short of giving you a blowjob, what can I do to make it right? He went, fucking hell, folk, it's just dear ticket mentality. Really. He said, I love you, but you're a fucking bastard. And I walked back very sheepishly, and we don't, I don't know if I'd done him out of a bite, but the funny thing was that October, Gary caught two tone England's first 60 pounder. That's when
Yeah.
he took the record and England's first 60.
So you've done him
And
a
I
favour,
messaged,
really.
that's exactly what I said. I messaged him. I said, right, you northern monkey, if you'd have caught that fish in August, it wouldn't have weighed what it weighed. And now you've caught it at 60 pounds. You've got me to thank for that. You owe me a beer, right? And he messaged back. He said, next carp show, I'll buy you one. And he did.
Yeah. He's a good old
Yeah, I
boy,
love
Gary.
Gary, but
I've fished.
that is bad behaviour.
Yeah, yeah. There is a line in it, and trouble is when it's very social. And Conning Brook was definitely, to an outsider, I've never set foot on the place, which it's not a regret, but it's. I was fishing the circuit waters in them days, the low stock lakes and chasing the fat
Yeah,
lady. I fish Yateley and stuff. So it was one of them that I missed out on. I think.
yeah. I mean, we was on there with Dave Woods,
Mm.
and now Dave had done Save and all that stuff. Dave's got a lot of history. He wrote that book last year, which he put a picture of me in two-tone, funny enough. And I always said I grew up on the Malin books and the Chris Yates books,
Yeah,
in the age when they bought books and didn't go stare at the phone. And I said to Woodsy, in my opinion, the famous five, Malin, Roger and Kerry, all that stuff on Save, and when they first started catching big fish regularly, that was the best fishing with the piss ups and all the stuff they were doing that England ever had. And Woodsy said to me, and I'll never forget, he said, yeah, you're right, it probably was. But he said, I'll tell you something, Uslot and Conning Brook was a close second or maybe even the same.
yeah,
And I was very lucky that I just happened to get that job at Solar. And then I was on Conning Brook with all them people that I adored, respected, looked up to, and they became friends. And I caught a few along the way, but it was so pure.
yeah,
Everything now is so diluted.
yeah,
And, no one really made any money out of fishing. No one got big sponsorship deals like they do now. Some of
yeah.
them are on big money. So we did it for the love of it and the love of fishing. And that seems to have gone because everything's about how much money they can make and how many followers they can get. All we cared about was having a laugh and hopefully catching one. And,
Yeah.
that's why them friendships are so strong nearly 30 years later.
Social media's been it's had the same effect on a lot of industries.
Yeah,
Obviously, what you just described in fishing, we spoke about that quite a bit on this podcast recently because all the young uns they want to be these Instagram famous, don't they? They want the likes, and we've seen the it's good news that the amount of women getting into fishing and genuinely getting into fishing, but it did start off with it was attention. They were getting a lot of likes
yeah,
in a male dominated industry. Then there's a lot of quite credible women, girls getting
yeah,
into the
definitely. That,
sport, which is great, obviously great for the industry, great for everything. But um, it's the same in the DJ world. I'll talk about the music stuff with you in a bit because Iron Maiden were my all-time favorite band. I know you have good connections there, but in the electronic music scene, the DJs now, the people that have been true DJs for 30 odd years, they don't get the bookings. It's the Instagram DJs now, the
yeah.
ones that are just really good at manipulating the algorithms, putting content out 3 times a day. And it's
Well,
like
well,
that's more important than the music now. And, I
well,
guess it's
that's the
happening.
same in. It is the same in fishing because back in the day, we got noticed because we were characters or we caught something,
Mm,
and it was pure. But now it's so diluted. It's so. I mean, the whole of Facebook specifically. I mean, I'm at the end of my tether with Facebook. I've been hovering over that delete button for a while, but
yeah,
I've got a book to sell, so I need to be on there.
yeah,
It's so false. There's so many attention seekers. There's so many sympathy seekers. People ranting and raving. It sucks out your happiness.
yeah,
Instagram doesn't seem to be so bad,
yeah,
but it's like the anglers now. They know nothing of the history. We knew everything. We read everything,
Yeah,
I mean, even to a certain degree, like myself, I was in them magazines and on the front of them magazines from 1998 to 2002, long before all this crop now, even the big names now, except for your Lanes, your Hearns, and people like that.
yeah,
And they don't realise with me, but it wasn't something I wanted to pursue because, like I said before, there was no money in it.
yeah,
I wanted to experience life and concerts and things, and I wasn't going to sit in a bivvy, poor. I mean, most of they were drunks, druggies, divorced. Now
yeah,
you've got these family guys with families, nice missuses, earning big money. It's a proper job,
yeah.
but it wasn't then. It was a den of iniquity and dysfunctional people, of which I happily say I'm one of them.
Yeah, I was the
I
same,
never
you
said
know.
I was anything.
If you remember in that kind of Dole era, there was a lot of full-time anglers that were, that were drawing the dole check monthly and living on the banks, I remember there was one guy who
Yeah,
was actually a bream angler, who had two bivvies, one for his kitchen and one for his thing, and he lived on, I think it was Brogborough Lagoon or whichever one it was at the time, and just lived there, and that was a thing. Then it turned into you could have a attic grow and grow weed in your attic, and then you could fish full time. But it was like there was this era, I think it was kind of 90s, really, 90s, 2000s, that um, there was a certain group of people, like you said, quite often the misfits, the people that didn't want to do
yeah,
the normal jobs. But then you also had, people that did work because, I mean, I'm exactly the same boat. I was with Nash 20 odd years, and there was one year they started paying me. I think it was 5 grand a year, but I was earning 50 grand a year as a DJ, just
yeah,
residences in the cities, and it didn't even cover me. And I had to travel down south for the gigs. The 5 grand a year didn't cover the fuel to go fishing every week,
yeah.
over the
I
course of a year. I was like, why do I want to give up everything else just to there was no money, and it was like I was probably one of the few anglers in the country that's ever been paid just to go fishing, and probably the only one to ever turn it down a year later and say, no, I don't want that. It's
no,
affecting me fishing. I'm not
I
enjoying it the same. And
I sat next to a very famous fisherman. I say his name because I don't want in 2008, and he was telling me he had six paid sponsorships from six different companies, come to 21 grand,
yeah,
and he couldn't get by. He had to do other work. And now, like I said, it's different now because there's big checks coming out because everything's so commercial. These companies are so big and the sport's so popular. I understand the economics of the situation, but the reason why I docked out of it and preferred to work was I didn't want to. There's more to the world than fishing.
yeah,
The world's a big place. I wanted to see it and experience it, and not, you speak about people at work. I remember me and Nick talking. Nick used to go and see Dave Mallin when he was fishing the Mere for the Black Mirror.
yeah,
And we both said, Dave Mallin, he's the man because he would work. I think he was a mechanic and
yeah,
he would work in a garage in Birmingham Monday to Thursday. He'd drive down to Raysbury after work on a Thursday, be out in a boat at midnight putting his baits in,
yeah,
fish the weekend, come back and work. And, people that, people that can make a living out of it, fair play. But again, going back to Nick, I'm sure Nick told me that sorry, when they fished the Mia, him and Terry for the Black Mirror, I'm 98, 99% sure it's true. They were so skint they had to catch eels to sell to the butchers to get tobacco.
wow,
So you had
yeah,
people like them, and fair play to them, for especially to getting money out of it. But they had to go through some real hardship, and I wasn't good enough to, I was never in their league. I'm an okay angler, but not in their league at all. I knew I'd never make a living out of it, and I certainly didn't want to be poor.
mm.
I was always better at spending money than I was at earning it.
Well, what would you say is I'm sure you've heard some figures like I have of money that Corda are paying certain people, but what do you reckon the if you're good at it now, if you're a good social media content follower, because most of the anglers, we've said this with a few of the other guests recently, but most of the anglers that are well known now, I mean, I'm taking out the old guard that are still around, your Terrys and everyone we've mentioned, but um, these kind of newer anglers that are really active on social media. I'll name one as an example, like a James Armstrong type guy. Most of these guys wouldn't have got in the magazines in the 2000s. Um, I think. I'm not
No.
saying James would or wouldn't. I'm not picking him specifically, but I mention him because he's so consistent with that social media. He does it all day long. I look at it and think, blimey, wish I had that motivation,
Yeah, yeah,
supposedly.
yeah.
But you need to do that to keep your feeds active and get the numbers and stuff. But most of the modern well-known anglers that they're known for the content as opposed to I couldn't tell you one fish that James Armstrong's caught. Did he catch Mary? Did he catch Heather the Leather? Arthur? No. Um, People were known for the fish that they caught. And this is the reason why I left Nash. I had an argument with them over. I said it's more about the fish, and they were like it's more about the picture and the social media at the time, and we had a bit of a set to about it, and I resigned. Um, they were probably right, but I'm right a bit as well. Us older anglers, we were interested in the fish, and I remember I think it was Bernie Loftus or it was one of the anglers at the time that I think he'd had one of the big Dinton 50s, and they'd agreed to put him on the front cover of whatever magazine it was, and then the editor went, "No, he's too old. Nobody wants to look at him." And I'm like, "It's about the fish, people want to
Mm.
see that
It's
50-pound linear." Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's not. You see, they can only fish for what's in front of them, and the truth of it is, but we go back to what we are talking about. Those iconic fish are now held in high esteem, and you haven't really got that, man. You've got the Burfield Common now, and some in Dinton, baby orange or baby chocolate, whatever it is. You've got a few dotted about here and there,
yeah,
but there's so many lakes that are stuffed full of fish that it's they're just numbers games, aren't they?
yeah,
They're not, So they, I don't see how you're ever going to make a name for yourself or go down in history or whatever for catching these sort of fish because they're not sought after. Anyone can just turn up and catch them.
yeah.
It's whereas before it was a select few who wanted the ultimate challenge. And that ultimate challenge, like now with the Burfield Common, if you get that, you're set forever. I mean, I remember when I was at Solar, Corder, Tucker, Solar, and Delkin. We used to do the trade shows together, and we used to work together. And Damien phoned me. Don't get me wrong, I haven't spoken to Damien since I left Solar, so it's not like I dislike him, but I used to hold him in quite high regard. I still do. And he said to me, he said, Spug, all you need to do is before I caught two-toe, catch two-toe, and you can live off the back of that forever, like I did the snake pit common.
Yeah.
And I remember I said, yeah, I mean, obviously, David, he's caught loads of fish. He's an extremely good angler. But he said that. And the thing is, the fact that people are still talking about it's 24 years ago that I caught that fish. The magazines, it wasn't that long ago. I did some stuff in Total Carp about it, blah, blah, blah. The fact that we're still talking about that 24 years later, and Mary and Heather and Basil and stuff
Mm.
like that, shows you what those fish mean and meant. Whereas no one will be talking about Red 374 from Grenville in 10 years' time, will they? Or whatever its name is.
Yeah, that's
Unless it breaks the record or something, I don't know.
I mean, I had a few of them old leisure sport tickets and ARC. Obviously, it was it RMC that used to own all
Ian
kind of
Welsh, yeah.
the late Ian Welsh. Yeah, whatever happened to him, by the way? He's sort of vanished off the
He
scene,
was
didn't
on
he?
my Facebook. He used to post, but like everybody else of an older generation, he's getting sick of it and doesn't bother or has left.
Yeah, yeah, quite true. But those days, I mean, the beauty of if you wanted to catch one of these big fish in the country, they usually lived in low stock lakes. It was like one flyer in a lake of kind of a few 20s and 30s, and generally one bigger. And
Yeah,
that's
a
sort of
freak
how it used.
fish.
Yeah, it was a freak flyer, and uh, all these late. What happened because there was months without catching? it it only appealed to a certain type of angler, and you had
Correct.
you had the ones that were on there because they just enjoyed it and they caught every now and again. You had the Terrys of the world that were obsessive and gonna catch it, and a few people in
Yeah.
between. But generally, the lakes were pretty quiet, weren't they? And I mean, at
Mm.
RMC, they ended up selling them all off because the fishing division was losing money. And look at all them lakes now. All you actually had to do was put 2,000 carp in them. They all grow to and feed them properly. They all grow to a decent
Mm.
size, and then the lakes are full. You can't get on any of them lakes anymore. So, but
And the tickets are immense prices.
exactly, and the waiting lists. Any decent lake now is, you got to wait a few
But
years, and
I guess there's a lot more anglers, so supply and demand.
I think it was more the fact that those low stock lakes, most people like to catch. They like something happening. You could go for a month on them, and like it's been high pressure for a month, and you've seen the odd fish, but there was just nothing happening. And but that was normal. But that messes with some people's brains. What am I doing wrong? And but it's just how it's meant to
Yeah, I
be.
mean, it wasn't really so much like that on Conning Brook because we spent as much time organising the barbecues and the piss ups, and you had your bounty hunters on there, on to catch it, gone. And then you got a load of other lads who've been on there for years. I mean, Ian Brown, he caught two-tone at 30, 40, and £50.
Wow.
And he just loved being down there. And, I'm not going to mention his name because he's dead. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but one of the lads used to turn up and one week he sat in his car for 6 days and just drank Stella. He didn't even get his fishing gear out. I mean, that's good angling, isn't it? But you don't get that now because now they net a fish and it's on the internet before they've even unhooked it. Whoa,
Yeah. And it's
what
expensive to go
fishing?
fishing now, but especially if you
Yeah,
have to
it is.
travel a bit, by the time you've done the fuel, your food and bit booze and whatever extras you have on the bank, the cost of the ticket, you can't walk into a tackle shop with a little bag now without spending 60, 70 quid.
No, it's true.
And so every session's three, four, £500, every time you go. So you can't. It was a working man sport in the fact that, like you said, you could just go and get pissed all weekend and not even care about the fishing. But it's
Care about it.
yeah, these days you're going to spend 5 ton doing that. You might as well just go the boozer or whatever. It was just a nice way to get away and quite cost effective, but it definitely isn't now. I don't think so. Maybe
No,
that's
it's
why.
it's got massive, so you have to accept that there's change, but it's got massively commercial, and it's for me being old school and being brought up with old school, it's lost its soul. It sold its soul to the commercial wheel,
Yeah,
and there are a few pockets left, but before it was always just having a laugh. I mean, when I went to work at Solar, I had Ian Booker there,
yeah,
the late great Ian Booker. We
yeah,
don't
yeah,
get much more history than him. I think he told me he was the second British angler to catch 100 doubles in a year, Bob Morris being the first.
yeah,
And, you had Booker in there, you had Sly, you had, Nick Hello, you had Belson, Chris Swaden, who was making butt bangers. Now, his dad was the first English angler to catch a 40-pounder on a herring.
yeah. Wow.
So and then you had Roger and Kerry walking
Yeah,
in. You had Malin walking in. Terry, when Nick turned up,
yeah,
Terry had come in. Oh, I just had the causeway fish, mate. And it's like, it was there. It was so the history, and I grew up with that. And Albert Romp, bless him. I know
yeah.
he's getting on now. He's a bit frail, but it was really funny because Dave Wood, Two Tone used to trip up regularly twice within a fortnight, end of May, first week of June. And Dave Woods caught it a couple of weeks after me, and I was like, "Happy days! If it snuffs it, it's not my fault. He was last to catch it." So it's always a worry when you got one of them
Of
big ones.
course it is.
And Albert Romp rings up Lockie, goes, "I see that shit has been out again."
Yeah.
And I've got some friends on Facebook. It doesn't matter what picture they put up, we just write shitter. Even if it was a British record, we just write shitter.
Yeah.
And that was the spirit of I've got to tell you I've got to get these couple of Solar stories. Then we'll forget about Solar because that was years ago. But Solar was just full of characters. Like I said, we had Booker, we had Mickey Sly work there. He was only there to stop himself from drinking. He didn't. His dad had given the family business. He said, "I'm not working like my dad." Sold it for £1 million, which is a lot of money then, something like that, in the bank. And he just come down Solar for something to do, so he wasn't pissed all the time. Anyway, I've got to tell this one. It was coming up to his 25th wedding anniversary, and his wife said, "Oh, should we book a party to celebrate is it silver wedding? I don't know. I never got past a year. Is it, our silver wedding anniversary?" he said, this is the sort of behaviour that went on at Solar, right? He went, I'm not celebrating 25 years with you. I want a divorce. So, right, they split up. Anyway, there was a steady stream of anything you wanted at Solar, it would appear. And about this time is when Viagra's came out for the
Right.
first time. And Sly started, can I use the word banging the barmaid?
Say what you want.
He's banging the barmaid. And he says, I'm going to get some of them Viagra's. And we're like, what do you want them for? Does it not work? And he said, well, look, if it makes one work that doesn't work, what's it going to do to one that does work? So we went, aha. So he said, right, I'm taking one home. I'm having that barmaid tonight. I'll let you know in the morning how I got on. So we're all right. So this is the main topic of work. Not how many pods we need, have we got enough bait made, and all the rest of it. So the next day, we're all there with a coffee. What happened? So he regales us with these tales of bending over on the back of the couch and sticking it into a rude boy style. And we were like, oh, that's amazing, mate. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. He said, but I've got a problem. We said, what's that? He said, I can't get me knob to go down. It's stuck. It's still erect. And we were like, anyway, got to 11 o'clock that morning and it's still stuck up. And he said, I'm going to have to go home. I've got a So he had to go home with a hard on because it was rubbing in his jeans. I mean, that was just like what it was like. That was the crazy stuff that happened at Solo. I mean, the other one that really makes me laugh, and we should really do that one where me and Lockie had all them fish I told you about, because that is a good story.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other one that really made me laugh was Nick come along. I adore Nick. Would I employ him? Never in a million years. I wouldn't trust him to cut my grass. But would I want to spend the rest of my life with him as a friend? Absolutely. He's a lovely guy and he's funny as fuck. He's not what people, he loves poking the bear. He does it for his own entertainment. He's not what people think he is. I know some people say, oh, he's this and he's that. He's not. He's lovely. Well, Lockie was stupid enough to say to me and him, will you two do the Zwalla show? I don't think it's called Zwalla now. I think it's got another name.
Yeah, it's moved, in it.
He said, will you two do the show? He said, I don't want to do it, you know. And we said, yeah. He said, well, I'll give you the cash for the hotel. Just drive over, Harwich, Hook Van Holland, set up, you know, then come back. All right. So anyway, me and Nick, we've gone off to Holland from Kent. So we've gone all the way up to Harwich. We've gone across the Hook Van Holland. We've gone and set the stand up, and we've got our hotel room and everything else. Anyway, we're in Holland, right? They've just made coffee shops legal. Now, I never got on with Puff. Other things I didn't do so bad on, but Puff, no good.
Yeah.
And I said to Nick,
not downers.
yeah, I said to Nick, mate, we're in Holland or wherever it was. I said, there's clubs full of women we can go and grab hold of, you know, might have to pay. Yeah. And, you know, and there's got, should we go and get amongst it? And he went, yeah, go on then. He said, well, I'm not interested in the girls. I just want to find a coffee shop and find some nuclear powered skunk. All right, whatever. So we split ways. I went off with this lad called Dominic. We found some seedy club where we had our fun. Nick found this coffee shop where he obviously got on a one-way ticket to Planet Zod. And we met at the end of the night. He's absolutely off his face. And I think it was that occasion when we went up in the hotel room and he was on his hands and knees down the corridor to get to, if it wasn't that, it was Stoneleigh. But anyway, so he woke up the next morning a bit bashful. I've got a hangover. He's still cross-eyed, doesn't know where he is. And we realised that we've done all the money that Lockie gave us for the hotel on sex and fucking drugs. My phone rings and it's Lockie. How you getting on? We went, not so well, really. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of me and Nick with the cigars. That's where that weekend that picture was taken. And not so well. He said, what's the matter? We said, we've done all the money on sex and drugs. And he went, good angling, go and see such and such a bloke on a stand, he'll give you some cash. So, all right. So anyway, we got through the show. And I said to Nick, because we were a couple of useless pricks, I said, I don't want to drive all the way through Holland to Hook Van Holland, take the catamaran thing, and then come all the way back down to Kent. He said, nah, fuck that. pardon me, I know there's someone going to go, "Mm, smells good."
Mm.
So we said, well, let's go through the Eurotunnel. Let's just drive through Belgium, get on the Eurotunnel, and we're straight into Kent to get back to work.
Yeah.
So we're going down the motorway. We're just falling to pieces. We haven't slept, hangovers, slow van full of stainless steel, whatever. We've come into the Eurotunnel where the duty free is, like this round dome thing. And we're walking in to get some duty free backy, and there's two women there with, doing a questionnaire with the clipboards.
Mm.
And I said to Nick, I said, "Oh, the last thing I need is to get done with this." I said, "Sod it, I'll pretend I'm German." He went, "Yeah, good idea, mate." So we're walking up, pretending to be German. She went, "Excuse me, do you mind if I ask you some questions?" And I went, "No, no, Germany." And she went, "No, you're not. Otherwise, it'd be Deutschland, wouldn't it?" And me and Nick just looked at each other. Oh, just about so that, and that was the sort of stuff that went on. It was laddish behaviour, but Lockie had I still believe the best anglers going, and it was a successful company.
And Lockie
But
said,
full of characters.
I mean, I know the stories of Lockie as well. I know he's liked his partying over the years. We've had him on the podcast and spoke about his sort of love of the progressive house music and all that. Sasha and Dickweed, he's addicted to, and that sort of genre.
Well,
So him
that was
sending you to Holland with a pile of money, he must have known what was happening.
that was the funny one when the Millennium came along. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a 3 year. Working at Solar was the same at working at Gillen's. 3 years and 2 years, and there's so many stories from them times. Proper good stories. Like now, I live a very boring life. I don't even go down a pub. I haven't done for 8 years. But we got to the Millennium, and you speak about Sasha and Digweed. Lockie says, "Right, we've had a good year. You can have a few £100 bonus. There's a lot of money then. Or I'll take you all to New York and we'll see Sasha and Digweed at Twilo's nightclub," which at the time, that was supposed to be like the club of the world, big digital sound system.
Yeah.
And they're going to play like an 11-hour set, whatever. This is another good one coming up. And what do you want to do? What we're going to do? We're going to go fishing and ignore it, and they'll give you your bonus, or should we have it large? And we looked at it and went, "Let's have it large." So we went to see the fireworks in London. We then went to the gallery, Turnmills. You know all about this. Yeah. Chris and James were playing, and they used to play for Renaissance.
Yeah.
And they're friends with Lockie. So we're on the guest list for that. We went into there. We come out of there. We drove round to Heathrow. We got in the airport, all mucking about on the luggage trolleys and stuff like that. Then we flew to New York. Well, of course, that was when everyone thought the planes were going to fall out of the sky. Nobody flew except us. We had like 5 seats each. The jumbo was nearly empty.
Yeah.
Had half an hour's kit, and then we went to Twilo's, where at that point, obviously, we all got completely off our nuts with Sasha and Digweed playing an 11-hour set. And we come out of there on the 2nd of January at 11 o'clock in the morning. And then we went up the Old World Trade Center. But the other thing that happened, and it was these sort of stories that generated the books. I was stumbling around Twilo's you could describe as a not very good state. And I sat down next to this girl, and cut a long story short, completely out of the blue, they were all coming up to me. You had Nick, Heller, there was 13 of us flew out there. There was Aaron, a bloke called Gareth, who's now won an Oscar. He'd done that film, The King's Speech or something. He was a photography man. Yeah. There's a load of us. And they're all coming up and going, "You're right, you're right." I said, "Man, I'm just twatted. I don't know where I am." And this girl was talking to me, and quite nice melons, which is always pleasant to have a little view at. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, she said, "You know what? It's from New Jersey. I really love sacking carp and swallowing the spunk." Well, what the fuck? People don't say that in England. I do know. And I thought there's something wrong here. I said, "What's your name?" She went, "Well, I don't know, Shamola," something like that. I went, "What was it before that?" "I don't know, Vincent." Oh. So I've gone back on the dance floor. They're all there chugging away to this stuff, this progressive stuff. How'd you go on with that bird? How'd you go on with that bird? I said, it's a geezer. And they're like, no way. I mean, that got mentioned in Carp World and Big Carp. Nick completely stitched me up in Big Carp, saying that I buggered off with her for a few hours, which I hadn't. And it was them sort of things. People say, why does this stuff keep happening to you? You've got to write this down. You know, that's what fed into things later in the years. But it's just madness.
So you've got three books now, is it? Carpin Mad series?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one been out recently, has there?
Yeah, the third book, Carpin Mad 5.
So the third book is Carpin Mad 5.
Yeah, the second book's Carpin Mad 3.
Got yeah, yeah, and I can see in the background you've got us at the original cover on the wall. Yeah, the
That was
original
just a
tab.
bit of cheap advertising. I had to move my table to fit that in.
So well, we might as well do a bit of advertising while you're here. Tell us. So the first book, are they all from like different eras of your life? Would you say, or
Yeah, yeah, no, completely. It's the first book starts the very first line. Christmas 1968 must have been good for me old man because I popped out 9 months later,
yeah,
and that goes right through until this 2008. The next book's from 2008 to 2014, and the next book from 2014 to last year. And it's the
yeah,
story. They are, might as well just do it. Carp fishing books are boring, so people say.
yeah,
These are not, these are completely unique in that there's some fish in there, enough to hold my head up high. There's 100 UK 30s, up to two-tone, and you know some of them are credible fish. There's some shitters in there,
yeah,
but there's 100 UK 30s. There's tuna, arapot stuff in Thailand, but there's a load of funny stories
yeah.
that no one else has done. And I mean, I read Mickey Gray's book, A Merry Old Dance, and I thought that ignited it. I thought I'm going through that with a bulldozer. We've got stories, you know, and between the three, leave it when I was lodging with two lesbians, and I left a little note written from an ex-girlfriend to me going, I can't believe how good you were with your tongue and all the rest of it, hoping that they'd go through my knicker drawer, read it, and then give me a go. I kept asking, but they kept saying no. You know, we've got car crashes where I ended up getting my butthole fingered. I nearly got spit roasted by two lady boys in Thailand when we'd actually flown 800 miles to try and shag a midget. It's just all that crazy because I admit I've been immature. You know, I wasn't the parent. I never grew up. But there's just reams of stories, you know, and sad stuff as well. I wanted them to be a story of life. There's no ego in there. I put myself down. I call myself fat. I've had cancer scares and all the rest of it. Well, I didn't think it was cancer, but the doctors thought it might be. Health issues, money issues, self doubt. It's a whole package. It's not, hey, I went on here, I banged them out, then I went to the next one and banged them out. We know we got shagging stories gone wrong. I got beat up by a girl in one of the books. You know, stuff that's made people cry when people have died. We got hand to hand combat with a cobra in Thailand. Only a baby one though, but that was scary enough.
Yeah.
So they got all these funny stories and shit that's happened, like trannies and ladyboys, and just designed to make people laugh,
Yeah.
to take all the ego out. I mean, I've read fishing books, and you know, people make themselves out to be like Navy SEAL. I'm like, no, I was there. That's not what happened. And you know, it was just designed to have a laugh and for someone to go, "Oh, fucking idiot!" I enjoyed that, and pretty much not everyone, because you'll never keep everyone happy. Pretty much everyone has said they've enjoyed them, and the first one was a success. It sold out. It's really hard to sell a book now, especially when
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
off
yeah.
the radar. The people who remember me, the old boys, like you said, the young ones, they wouldn't know who Spug was. They wouldn't be interested, you know, because I don't sit there going like, share on every company's post. I don't do it. Um, you know, but the older school, my demographic is older people like me who remember, you know, me from all in magazines because I was in all the magazines back in the late 90s and front of nearly all of them as well.
Yeah.
You know, but then I walked away from it. I didn't want it, but then I got a resurgence 2006 when Kev from Mainline asked me to do their Ask the Experts and what's occurring. And then all of a sudden I'm back in the magazines again. But then the magazines died and so did Spug. See you later, mate. You're too ugly for YouTube. And that was the end of that.
You never worry about any sort of comeback with some of them stories, legally or otherwise. I mean, I've had a not dissimilar life, fishing's been an important part of it, but not my identity, if you know what I mean.
No, I'll tell you why. Because nobody was ever mentioned by name.
Yeah.
So you don't know who I'm talking to. And most of it is fired at me.
Yeah.
So they don't know that if there was a story with someone, I would never name them if it could even be half libelous. It's just me goofing about, and there are reams of funny stories, and stupid behaviour. And unfortunately, the downside to it is it's led to me having this terrible reputation. I went down every bad avenue in life. I tell it like it is, whether people like it or not. I did drink, drugs, hookers, strippers, everything. In fact, the only thing I never got in trouble with was gambling. I just thought that was a waste of money. But everything else, I did it, but I don't now. I'm years and years clear of it. But what you did 15 years ago, people still remember now. They don't see that. Like when I got back from Thailand, I've been back, like I said, 8.5 years. I haven't even been out for a pint. I don't drink lager. I used to be, I guess I was an alcoholic. I used to do 14 bottles of wine a week and go to work. Now I don't even do one. I have half a bottle and I'm fast asleep.
Yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine you on the loose in Thailand, given the background and the things that sort of stimulated us all back then.
Yeah,
what was Thailand like?
Thailand is it was an incredible journey. When I was working at Gillen's, so you've got, which is what he's created is utterly amazing. It was a marsh field, and he's made this incredible fish. And look, it's an overstocked stock pond. Let's make no mistake about it. Yeah. But it gives people the opportunity to catch fish that they'd probably spend £1 million in a lifetime trying to catch in the wild.
Yeah.
So it doesn't claim to be anything. When I was there one day on a full moon in a Siamese carp, there was 113 pounders out in a day.
Wow.
113. It makes people's dreams come true.
Yeah.
There's a lovely restaurant and all the rest of it. And, but Thailand itself is batshit crazy. In a nice way. They're different to us. I wanted to learn about them, and I had a Thai girlfriend for a year. She beat the fuck out of me, ripped the shirt off my back, and I've got scars all over me. Not now, but at the time, that's one of the stories in the book. I got beaten up by her in front of my mate Lawrence and his little missus Mina. They stood there open mouthed when the attack started. He said, "Why did you not hit her?" I said, "I don't hit girls, mate." He said, "But anyone who fights like that deserves a thick ear." I said, "Well, it might be right, but I didn't." So, you've got alcohol, you've got customers, you've got hot weather, you've got snakes, you've got scorpions. Now, the snakes, they're not really an issue because they stay out the way in the heat and they hide and they sort of come out. But, there was the odd one. I was fishing up the top lake. This was in the last book. Float fishing with sweet corn. I had a little tin of sweet corn next to me, and behind me there was a bank that went straight up with woods behind. So I was always looking to make sure nothing didn't slither along because I was paranoid about it. Because if there's anyone going to get bit, it's going to be me. Even though no one's ever been bitten there, I'd be the first. Anyway, I heard this I can't do it. This squeaking noise. I looked down. There was a mouse eating my sweet corn. They had a 4-foot red snake eating it right next to my foot. I went straight up like a, So it was one of them things where just crazy stuff happened. Drunk customers. We had two brothers fighting. One jumped at the other, and he went through what they call them windows you have at the back of the house that slide. French windows or something.
Yeah, something like that.
He's gone straight through it and cut himself to pieces. There was blood everywhere. And we're like, "Well, I'm going to deal with this." So, you had lady boys in the local town fighting and stuff. It was you can't make it up, but it was life changing for me, without doubt. And I don't really talk to them anymore because they slagged me off when I left. But that's what you get when you're in the fishing industry, it would appear. And I am grateful for the opportunity they gave me. But at the end of the day, I knew Iron Maiden were going to be coming to Asia, and I quit a 36 grand job at Co-op
Yeah,
to go to Thailand, knowing that Maiden were more likely than not going to hit Asia. And I really wanted to see them in Tokyo.
yeah,
So if I'm sitting out in Thailand when they get to Tokyo, it's not that far a journey. It's a lot farther from England,
yeah.
you know. So, my plan got derailed a bit because the singer got throat cancer and everything was put back a year. So I wanted to go to Thailand for 1 year. I ended up out there for two, just
So
waiting
you just
for
stayed
our
until Maiden eventually came.
Yeah, yeah. And then about 3 months after because I got really lucky because they announced two gigs in Tokyo. So
Mm,
happy days, tick. And then 2 days later, the first ever Chinese gig in Beijing. So
right.
I'm like, oh, I can get on the Great Wall of China here as well. Tick. And then, so I did both, borrowed some money, because obviously I didn't have any money, never had any money. Out of habits I've had. I mean, now I'm not in debt, but I spent my whole life in debt. And, I made it happen. And it was about 3 months after that, I handed my notice in. And then my name was shit.
So it's I know you're friends with Adrian Smith, one of the three guitarists these days. There was two guitarists when I was young, but Adrian Smith's a carp angler. Um, how did you come across meeting him? Was it through following the band, or what was the story behind that?
It was the first book. What happened was I used to know a chap that ran the Iron Maiden fan club. The first book, there's some bits about Iron Maiden in. Like I said, it's not just fishing. There's all sorts of shit in there.
Mm,
And there's some bits about Iron Maiden. When the first book came out, I sent them to the chap that used to run the fan club and said, can, see if you can post them to the
yeah,
band members. Cut a long story short, Adrian, I didn't put any contact details in or anything like that. I thought, just want them. I knew Adrian was a fisherman because he'd been on the front of Angus Mail, nigh
yeah,
on or was an 8 pound chub.
yeah,
He's not just a carp fisherman, he's a really good all rounder.
yeah,
And he catches them by design as well. He doesn't, like me, catch a 10 pound, well, I haven't caught a 9 pound tench carp fish and go, no, I caught.
yeah.
He does it by wanting to catch
Fishes
it.
for the tench, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, cut a long story short, they were rehearsing for the final Frontier Tour 2010, and Bruce, the singer, had got his, and he took it out to Paris, and he walked into Adrian's hotel room and said, "There you go, mate. There's some carp porn for you."
Yeah.
And then Adrian read it, laughed, liked it, thought it was okay, and then what happened was that we went on a fan club trip where the singer, who's a pilot, he chartered a plane for 250 fans.
Yeah.
Of course, I couldn't get on there fast enough. He flew us out to Italy to a gig where you got to meet him, got some stuff signed. Well, that picture, you can't see his signature, but that picture there signed by him.
Yeah.
That was done in Poland on another trip. But we're in Italy, and the chap from the fan club walked round the back and where the band members were, sees Adrian chucking some bread in, and there was an ornamental pond with koi and that in, and he said, "Oh, typical fisherman." He said, "Oh, we got Spug on the plane." Now the bloke knew that Adrian had read my book at this point,
Yeah.
and Adrian said, "Oh, I'd quite like to meet him, to say hello, thanks for the book, sort of thing, blah blah blah." So they come out in the crowd. This is story. If you Google Spud goes fishing with Iron Maiden, this whole story is on the mainline website, so I won't go into too much detail. They come out looking for me, couldn't find me, and they got on the coach to go home the next day. And not Adrian, the fan club people. And then the next day they said, "Oh, you missed out there. You want to say hello?"
Mm.
And fucking hell, what am I going to do? He said, "Look, email me all your contact details. Either he'll get hold of you or he won't."
Yeah.
And then the next week I was driving along. I had a phone call from a withheld number. I thought, that's the bank chasing me again.
Yeah.
I'm not answering that. So I'm driving a lorry, got chips to deliver. And I thought, hang on, might have been Adrian. Might have
Mm.
been. Next day it rang again. I thought I better answer, and it was Adrian. And cut a long story short, we ended up in the end going fishing, and we've been a few times. We've been bream fishing at Walthamstow. We had two or three trips to Foxmere. We've been up the River Trent, barbel fishing.
Wow.
We've been tench. There's a nice tench fishing video on my YouTube channel, 18-minute long, where he just caned it. He's really good at that stuff. And we've also been zander fishing at Berry Hill.
No way. I was going
Yeah,
to
so
ask you
we've been about
before
10 times.
when you were saying about going to Tokyo to see them. I was going to ask you then if you'd been on the plane, and you've actually been on the Iron Maiden plane with Bruce flying it.
Yeah, it, what no, it was the very first plane that they had. I don't know, a 757, right?
Mm.
Had all the Eddie stickers on it and everything. And
Yeah, I've seen that one.
we actually went on that plane, but when they'd stopped using it for the tour, which I think was the one Flight 666, there's a film about it
Yeah,
and a
I've seen it. Yeah.
DVD. Right, that plane,
Hmm.
we flew on that plane. But in between them not using it on the tour, they were using it to go to Africa and places like that. And the people wouldn't get on the plane because of the big Eddie, the big
The
monster on the
demon.
tailgate. So they had to take the stickers off.
No
So we
way, I didn't
actually
know that.
flew on the plane,
Yeah,
but without the stickers. And some of them got upset about it. I didn't. I said, well, who gives a shit? It's just a fucking sticker, isn't it?
yeah,
But yeah, we did fly on that plane. And then the other one, when we went, because that particular trip we flew on that plane, we went to Warsaw, Poland, saw a gig, night in the hotel,
yeah.
got up the next day, went to the Czech Republic, saw them play there, straight back to the airport, straight back to England.
It's another world, isn't it? I've experienced that side of the world. I tour managed for a famous DJ, like a headline festival sort of level DJ. So the equivalent in electronic music to
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and just those whole experiences, planes, helicopters, walking in the back doors instead of the front doors of venues, and like it's another world. It just seems a bit surreal. But Iron Maiden were my heroes as a child. I was in that fan club you talk about in the early days. I used to get the brochures, the books. Probably seen him. I don't know how many times, but a lot. Monsters of Rock, 1988 was the first time I was 16 years old. Yeah,
I was
Guns
there,
Guns N' Roses, Kiss,
Megadeth,
David Lee
David Lee Roth.
Roth. Yeah, no, I've still got the big poster. I've got a massive poster, probably this big. The blue one it was. And unfortunately the two like kids got killed, didn't they, during the crush
Yeah, I
from
was
Gun.
just off that at the
Yeah,
front.
I was further back. It was scary. That was my first ever live concert, and other than seeing bands in pubs and stuff, but it was
I mean,
scary. It was scary.
it was scary. It all happened when Guns N' Roses were on.
That's right. Yeah,
Now you had 106,000 people in the crowd. It was raining, it was wet, and it was slippy.
it was a
And I
slope
seem
as
to
well, wasn't it?
recall,
Forward.
yeah, and you didn't have that was the because of that incident when them two lads got crushed. That's why they put that walkway out into gigs after,
Yeah,
and that was because of that. And I was right on the outside. I've got photos taken an old Kodak disc camera of the security blokes pulling people over.
yeah,
We were in it. We were swaying like our feet were there, and then we were like that. It
yeah,
was fucking frightening.
yeah,
And in fact, it was the last time I went down the front, unless I've got a gold area and I'm at the back. I won't go in the crush because I was only 18. I was strong because I was carrying pigs at an abattoir for a living. But it was it was scary. And then, of course, at the end of the gig, we found out two lads had died, and then we lost my mate, and we couldn't find him, and we had to go to the police and
yeah,
give a description to the police mobile own things, and said, "Oh, he's dark haired, blah blah blah." Said, "No, has he got any tattoos?" We went, "No." So, well, these two lads have got tattoos. It's not him. So we thought he'd been injured
yeah.
and everything else. So I said, what do we do? So we just sat in the car. Festivals then were one night. We sat in the car, and I'm just like, oh, he's in hospital, whatever, because there was quite a few, I think, crushed. And anyway, 4 o'clock in the morning, oh, that's me. I said, where the fucking hell have you been? Oh, I found some hippies and got really stoned, missed the whole thing.
It was
Fucking
it
shouted
was
at him.
there was obviously rumors of the kids dying going out. I was there on a coach trip. I was only 16, so coach from Birmingham, I think we got. Um, but we the exit, like when it all finished, there was these rumors flying about everywhere, and I remember you had no control where you went. My feet were off the floor, and
Yeah,
you were being squeezed in the crush, and you were being carried wherever
yeah, you were.
the
Yeah,
crowd went. Your feet
where
were
we
not
were,
touching anything.
people were going over, and we were pulling them up,
Yeah,
and we were nearly over, and people were grabbing us, and I just said to my mate, "I've got to get out of this. This is dangerous."
yeah, it was
And
terrifying.
it was, and people always. It's not because I'm so loyal to Iron Maiden. People always associate it with Iron Maiden. It was Guns N' Roses that were on.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah,
Iron Maiden. And what actually happened with the rumours was after the show finished, the fireworks went off, and then
mm,
before they played "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," which they did on that tour, it was announced on stage that two people had died and they couldn't identify them. And if you've lost someone, to go to the police. So
yeah.
that's why the rumours. You might not have heard that,
No, I was
but
already on the way out. I think in that crush
yeah,
on the way out.
we were standing by the drinking water stand waiting for um, the mate to turn up, who was absolutely obliterated off his head in another galaxy, as it turned out. But bless him, he's died as well of meningitis
Oh dear.
a few years after. So
It
Danny,
was
bless him.
that was probably from the amount of piss flying about. Do you remember that? The bottles in the air, and it
Yeah,
was unreal
the
because you couldn't
first
move. Everyone was just
no,
pissing in bottles and throwing them. There
the
was like 100 in the air at any one time when you looked up.
I've got photos of that. I was in the
Really?
bottle fight. Yeah, I was in the bottle fight, and there was a massive pile of plastic bottles. This is well before, I think this is early in the day it started.
Yeah,
There was
it
a
was.
massive pile of plastic bottles, and people either side and facing each other, just throwing them. And then they'd all charge and that. And I've got photos from in the bottle fight.
Got you,
And
yeah.
the first Donington we went to, I went with my mate Glob the Grebo, Sean Millard, absolute legend. And it had Bad News, the
Yeah,
Young
yeah,
Ones
yeah.
group, Aussie headlines, all the rest of it. And we were only 16, young, dumb, and full of cum. And we got in the crowd and we were like, oh, this is good. It's fucking rock music, first festival. And there's all these bottles of beer flying over, and we're like that, free beer, until we realised it was piss. Because people were just pissing in bottles and throwing them. But I don't know how much we consumed in litres, but as soon as we saw someone pissing in a plastic container and throwing it, we're like, we need to stop this, and now.
Yeah, I went on there. I was addicted to Iron Maiden for a lot of years. I remember learning. I think I was 13 years old, learning Phantom of the Opera with me and my mate. Did a sort of dual guitar harmony bit at school assembly once. It
Yeah.
was I learned every sort of Maiden song. So Adrian and Dave Murray were two of my idols. At the
And
time.
and that's the thing with him. And yeah, he is what he is with his work, but he's such a nice guy.
Yeah,
And a few of my friends are. Let's face it, I can be a bell end at times. I don't even like myself with some of the things I've done. I thought, fucking idiot, Spug, you need to grow up. And he's never judged me. And I've been drunk round him. I mean, we
mm,
had the story which he wrote in it. He wrote a book, Monsters of Rivers and Rock, don't you?
yeah,
Well, he wrote this story in his book and put our picture in, me, Dean Macy, him, and my friend Lawrence, and everything else. We're there having a barbecue. We're on the River Trent at Colin and Weir. AJ's had a couple of doubles. Dean just landed three 14-pounders in half an hour,
wow.
which we videoed. We got two in the net at the same time. I've written it, but I just don't think I've written it as well as he does. He's a very clever man. He might
Mm.
be sort of shy and not gobby like me, but he's no fool.
They all had skills,
And
the whole band, didn't they?
you can't be as successful as they have been for so long and be a dollard. You've
Yeah.
got to be on your game. So we're all sitting there. I'm in a Fox Easy dome that's got, they've got a flap round the bottom where the mosquito net goes around, don't you? So I've had the vodka, I've done the wine, I'm having a lovely time. We've got Dean, who's always nice to be around, got Lawrence, got Adrian. And we've done the first round of meat and whatever. I'm cooking Lawrence's steak. And all of a sudden, my rod goes. So I go, whoa. I've gone to run out of the bivvy, but my foot has caught the flap at the bottom of the easy
Yeah.
dome bit, and I've just face planted on the barbecue, sent all the coals fucking
Oh.
flying, sent Lawrence's steak in the thing. When we sort of recovered afterwards, there's a hot, I bought them all glow in the dark skull plastic mugs. Adrian had one, Dino. We're all drinking out of them and laugh. All these things are glowing in the dark. A coal of hot, can't even say it. A lump of hot coal went through the stalk on Adrian's glass. But I'm face down in the mud. This rod's going on the side of the trench. You got Macy and that Bender Lawrence just bent over laughing. Adrian's like, this is such a nice guy. Are you all right, mate? You're all right. Fucking hell, there's coals everywhere, smouldering on the trousers. Oh, yeah, no, I'm fine. And then I run over, it's a 7-pounder or something like that. But that photo with me, Dean, and Adrian, I think Dean's giving it that, and Adrian's just laughing. That was from that capture. And that was a great story in the book. That's what we sort of kind of got that. We made a film of that little trip that I chucked on my YouTube channel.
I was going to say, I didn't actually know about your YouTube channel. So there's, let me have a look for it now. So it's, is it just Mike Spug, Redfern?
It's Spug Redfern TV, all one word.
I'm going to have a little search for it now. So, and what's on there then? Is there a lot of stuff?
There's a lot of goofing about because the best one, I guess, is the Conning Brook one.
Yeah.
I had a video camera with me when we fished the brook 99 to 2001.
Yeah.
And it's basically the only footage of that era. There's Lee Jackson on there, Cockle, Woodsy, barbecues, alcohol, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I tell the story, including the Gary Baze incident, on there. I mean, I'm not an internet sensation. In fact, the word sensation and me have never gone in the same sentence. But that particular film's had 13,000 views now.
Yeah.
And it just tells the story of Conning Brook. There's some fishing ones, like when I went to Monk's Pit to try and catch a Cambridgeshire 40. There's what's the other one? There's me and Adrian fishing, the Tench-tastic, and there's the one up the River Trent, but with that story. There's when I was at Gillam's, I wanted to record the different species of fish, so I'd done this little series called Gillam's Monsters, where there's Pacu on one, there's Amazon Redtail Siamese on another, Mekong on another, and I've turned it into, you know what Wade's like, this could be my biggest quest yet. So I used all that, and I said that I had to try and catch an arapaima of 200 pound or more, because legend has it that I'd lose weight and get a bigger cock, both of which I could do with. And then it all ends when I get a 350 pound arapaima. But unfortunately, the legend was wrong. I've still got a fat belly and can't see my cock.
I've just looked at it now. I'll put a link to this underneath the podcast when we share it. But there's loads of content on there. There's a lot.
I've had a lot of people contact me about the Conning Brook, and they've said, "Mate, that video is the bollocks. It's back in the day. You know, we've got picnic hampers. You know, Mandy's on there, Lee Jackson's sister. I mean, that was a blind date, and you know, she was beautiful. She'd done page 3.
Really?
It was really funny because when I went out with Mandy, she said, "Don't tell Lee, but I've actually been topless in the Star and the Sport years ago before I had a kid." And that she only done it twice, so we're not talking Samantha Fox fame, but she has, you know, she was. And it was really funny because Lee said, "Don't tell Mandy, I know," but she was topless in the paper, so they both told me not to tell the other one. And she's a very, very pretty girl, and she was a fucking good laugh. And, you know, that's how it was. The girls were, people's girlfriends were just as welcome, you know, because it was such a family together. You know, we had a party, we'd all look after each other, and, you know, it was great, you know. And so that video, I think, is probably the best. There's a lot of goofing about because I don't take myself seriously.
Oh yeah, the first video I'm looking at is there's quite a lot from 13 years ago, 12 years ago. I wasn't watching YouTube back then, so you've been at it a long time. But the very first video on there I'm looking at now is the boilie super glue to my nose incident. That's the first one. I'm going to have a look through.
Well, do you remember back in the day when you fished France, you used plastic mesh and you spun it or tights, and then you went round with mono, and you put a load of glue on, and then you trimmed it, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I had it. I went like that, and the glue is still wet. And the next thing I know, I can super glued it. But there's tasering myself, egg. You know, the classic story when we flew up to Chiang Mai in Thailand to try and find this female midget. It's such a great story. She had gone, she got a boyfriend, and the little male midget was, or dwarf to be politically correct, he was in there, and I was me air guitaring with him to Dire Straits. There is some funny stuff, but again, it's all, I've always fought against selling out and ego in fishing.
Yeah.
It's always been pure with me. The closest I got was when I fished Monk's Pit. I loved Monk's when I first went down there. Yeah, it was an old school thing. I'd had a 40 out of Surrey, Frimley. I'd had two-tone, and I'd had one out in Norfolk. I wanted to get one from Cambridgeshire.
Mm.
And Monk's was the most accessible lake. And I was working, lorry driving, whatever it was. I don't have time to go for a hard one. So what's your best option? Monk's. So I went down there, started really well. I got them up to 38. And then I went off to Thailand, came back, rejoined. And there was like 10 40s in there. But after they spawned, there was 4 or 5. And they slowly got bigger during the year. And then they started force feeding them on this baiting campaign, putting in 300 to 500 kilos a week. And I hated the place. When I finally caught a 40 out of there, it was the biggest anticlimax. And I walked away from it. And everyone's like, how can you walk away from 40 40s and 450s? So they're just shitters, mate. They're not natural, you know. It's all, and they were bitching and arguing and fighting on the. And so I don't want my fishing to be about this. I want my fishing to be right. What we having? Pork, beef, or lamb this week?
Yeah.
And I consequently my chin dropped and I didn't fish it very well. I got myself a boat because everybody else had a boat. I never had a boat before. Just went out, 20 wraps, dropped it, and hoped for the best.
Doesn't
I was
feel like
struggling
fishing, does it?
It's not. You know, I was struggling in life, finding things hard, and fishing wasn't my escape because it's pure escapology, isn't it? Like now, I'm going at the end of the month. I can't wait to go. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to the old no publicity water I'm fishing. I don't care if I don't catch. I just want to sit in my tent looking like a big orangutan. Lots of fat now. I've lost 2 stone. Just sit in my tent and enjoy myself. And I didn't enjoy myself on Monk, so I walked away from it. Some really nice lads fishing there. Big Rob and little Jordan. What's his name? Scooby-Doo, I call him. Jordan. Very good angler, young lad. I mean, if you fished it well, you catch a load of fish. But I don't want to catch a load of fish. I'd rather sit there waiting for a good one to come along.
Yeah.
You know, like when I had 3 scales in Norfolk. I've had 6 Norfolk 40s now. And that isn't bad for a bloke that works.
Yeah.
You know, but 3 scales topped it really because that was 140 pounder and a 30-acre pit weedy. And I completely got inside its head. And it sounds an arrogant thing, but I've researched all its previous captures. It got caught over bait in the edge.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I caught it. That's on there. That capture is at the end of Monk's Pit Part 4 on the YouTube channel. I actually saw it come around the corner, dive down to where my bait was, and it didn't even take any line. Caught it 10 yards out, exactly like they said. You know, and that's what if there's nothing like catching the big one, is there? One big fish in a pond. You know, but when you've got these
feeling like it's a feeling as good as any. You know, I've had a similar life to you with the party and stuff. You know, I've tried to never grow up. You know, I've always worked in the music industry, so it's, you know, what goes on. You know, on the daily, you see it's a surreal life. But though, whatever the best drugs I've had with the best experience with a woman, all at the same time, that catching that single fish that you've been hunting, you know, you've learned its habits, you've learned where it comes from at certain times of the year. You know, a lot of these low stock ones I fish, the fish come out once every 2 years or once every 3 years or something.
Yeah, and
so that feeling's a bigger high than any other high I've had, and it's a natural high, you know.
Yeah, it's you can't describe it. It's like I said, everything's so cultivated now. You know, get it on the money, get your bait in. You can buy rigs, you can buy bait, you can buy everything. you go to these places, call them super waters if you want. I don't want to slag them off because that's the old iconic fish are dead. So it's just different. That's what point I'm trying to make. But if you land a 40-pounder out of one of these highly stocked lakes, it's just a bite, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not, you haven't sorted it out, you haven't primed the spot because there's too many people. You know, it's just another run. It might as well be a 10-pounder. And, you know, there's some amazing fisheries in there. I wouldn't fish them. I like to kind of, I mean, I'm on sort of a fish charity in recent years, charity lakes in Norfolk. You know, but it's hard to get a bite on there. They don't give themselves away. So when you get one, even if it's 17 pounds, you're all happy.
Yeah.
When I caught that 42 out of Monks, I drove home and my actual thought was, thank fuck for that, I can leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'd made my move. I'd started making my videos and it'd have been quite I wouldn't say public because there's not a big viewing audience, but it'd have been quite a failure. So I had to see it through and I'll just see you later. You know, bailiffs setting up in swims, reserving them for ourselves. We can only fish one zig. They were fishing 3 zigs, baiting up in the closed season, and then strangely enough, when the season started, their bivvies right where they put nearly a ton of bait and they're catching them. Games like that, I'm not interested. You know, I've got no issue with fishing with bailiffs at all, as long as they fish on the same rules I do. They might have their own dedicated swim, don't care about that either. But, you know, when they're pulling strokes on you, you're spending I mean, I had a free ticket for months, a mainline ticket, because mainline sponsored the lake. It got so bad on there with the bitching and that, I actually gave up my free ticket because I didn't want not to be associated with mainline. I didn't want to be on anyone's radar, so I paid. I didn't have the money. I had to pay £100 a month.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to get off the radar. Then I went. I didn't want my actions to reflect on mainline.
Yeah.
And so if I told them to fuck off and whatever I wanted to say, I didn't want look,
to be on the mainline ticket.
Yeah. So I had my own ticket, and then I told them to fuck off.
Yeah, I've had all of that in fishing over the years as well. There's some places are very clicky as well, aren't they? And there's and the more sort of circuit water it is, it's
What was that? What was that saying I heard the other day about haters? And I know there's haters on my social media. You can always tell. There's always one pops the snidey remark in.
Yeah.
In fact, I blocked one the other day. He might have been a nice fella, but he always just says stupid shit. I thought, you got to go, mate, because I've got zero tolerance to being someone having a go or trying to make me look shit. I just block them. Yeah. It's like you'll notice if you look at that YouTube channel, I've turned off all the comments on all the videos.
YouTube's the most toxic for comments. Like, never read the comments on YouTube.
Yeah. My mate said to me, why have you done that? You stop the algorithms. You stop it getting views. I said, because I am completely uninterested in what the internet has got to tell me what they think about my films. I know their shit. There's no drones. There's no HD or 720p, whatever. It's just me goofing about. And every film that I see Corda do lovely films, Nash, Mainline, all these big companies, there's always someone slagging them off. And I think when I ran, it was me that put Mainline on Facebook. I said to Kev about it, we've got to get on this Facebook, 2008, whatever it was. He said, well, I absolutely adore Kev Knight. He's one of the best people on planet Earth. And he said, well, you do it then. Because the reason I said to him about it was because people were making false accounts. And I was running Mainline's media at the time, doing that, Ask the Experts and what's occurring and that. I said, well, I'll do it. And I had a policy, because you were always going to get, whether it be Nash, Richworth, Neutral, always get one of their lot, come on and go, that bait shit, or that's a copy of that, or that's got turtle head juice in it, or whatever. I blocked every one of them. And that's the only way you see these people get upset because they're trolled. You can put a post on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube and turn the comments off.
Yeah.
And I've often said, I've watched films and that these people have got professional film crews now. And there's always someone slagging them, which is what I hate about the internet. To me, the world was a better place without the internet, except for shopping and shit like that. But specifically social media. I thought, why do these companies make these lovely films and then let people slag them?
Yeah.
I would have someone on there blocking everyone or turning the comments off. Who cares what people think? It is what it is. If you like my films, God bless you. If you hate them, God bless you. Who cares? I'm not
Yeah.
trying to get any money out of fishing. I'm not trying to get anything. It's just, it's there. If I snuff it, they're there forever, aren't they? It's what I've left behind, like the books. And that's what the whole idea of the books was. It's my legacy because I've cocked up the rest of my life. There's three things I didn't cock up, and
Well,
they'll be there forever.
we're very much alike. I have that same feeling. I've cocked up most of my life. So, and
But see, the
but
thing, I mean, I've put a part in the new book. It says, you've got your friends are too nice to tell you. You need to sort yourself out. You're fat. You're a drunk. You're a druggie. You're in debt. Whatever. If you've got issues with drink or drugs or money or you're fat, whatever, that's your fault. And the only person who can sort it out is you. And luckily, as far as the drugs, it makes it sound like I'm talking. I'm not. I haven't touched them for over 10 years. And for the last 5 years before that, it was once a year. So we're not talking here Robbie
yeah.
Williams in rehab. But the alcohol, I couldn't stop drinking. I mean, when I worked for Co-op, I had a breathalyzer I bought from Halfords, and I worked it out to the unit what I could drink every night, so that when I left for work at 5 in the morning, I was just under the legal limit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an alcoholic, right? But now I'm not. Like I said, I've got a good job that I like, and working for nice people, and I can say that without they won't watch it, but I don't drink at all. Like I'm working tomorrow. I'm up at 4:30 in the morning. I have to have 4 coffees and a good shit. I'm off to work at 10 to 6, and I won't drink today, and I won't drink all week until I get home Friday when I finish work. And then
Yeah.
I'll try and drink a bottle of wine, but I guarantee you I'll be asleep halfway through it. And that's what I go back to, this reputation of being this party animal, but couldn't be further from the truth. And that's why at the end of the last page of the last book, we put a picture of me asleep like that, little Mina laughing behind. Reputation. Spug's coming. Gonna have a right party. Reality. And there I am, old, tired, and worn out.
That's probably a good note to end this on. We've been well over 90 minutes, which is as long as we normally do on an interview. I know
Yeah,
we haven't touched half the story, so I'd like you to come back if you would do that in a month
yeah.
or two, and we'll do it again and have a chat about a few more. Would be absolutely lovely if you could get Adrian or someone to join you. Like, do you reckon he'd be up for doing a podcast with us at
I
some
have
point?
no idea. He's a busy guy,
Of
and
course, of course. Well, I'll
he's
just throw it out there into the universe. If somebody makes it happen, or maybe he watches this, then I would absolutely love to talk about his fishing with yourself and get some more of the stories.
I mean, there is the odd bit of him with fishing on thing, but you've got to dive into that because
Yeah,
his £15 barbel, £10 tench, £8 chub, three £40 commons in a year, different fish,
yeah.
and proper ones as well, and a £40 mirror. He's an exceptionally good
It's the
angler,
real deal.
and
Yeah, I mean, we touched
he
on
is.
that with Iron Maiden, like all of them. Steve Harris could have played for West Ham. Bruce Dickinson's been an Olympic fencer, a airline pilot, and God knows what
Yeah,
else in between. They were all sort of special individuals. So it doesn't surprise me that Adrian is an exceptional angler as well. Because, like you said,
yeah, he
to
is. Yeah.
to be that disciplined to get to the top of any industry, it's a personality. I
and
think.
more importantly to maintain it because
Yes.
they're still chundering out great albums and great tours.
Yeah.
Oasis, first two albums absolutely amazing, the rest of them were shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And second album syndrome. So, but yeah, if we do another one, got to tell the story of when I stitched Ruth Lockwood up from the Yateley.
I know
It was
Ruth. Yeah.
Mickey Gray described it as the best wind up that ever happened in carp fishing. That's coming from Mickey Gray.
Go on.
Praise indeed.
You're gonna have to tell us now. Let's do this one and finish on that.
You don't want to leave that for the next time? I'll do it. It's not a problem.
Is it a long one?
Nah, not really. I can do it in 2 or 3, 4 minutes, maybe 5.
Let's go. We can't drop a cliffhanger like
Right.
that.
Okay. So 2008, all of a sudden, I've got 15 grand when a company pension transfers from one company to another.
Yeah.
And they say, you can pull some out if you like. Yes, please. I've never had
Yeah.
any money in my life. What are you going to do? And I'm like, I've got all these stories. I've touched on the stories I had in the first book. You got all these stories. I want to do a carp book. I grew up with books. I love books. They're there they're magic. They're not like that, are they?
Yeah.
So I'm going to do my book and everything else. And I needed 30 pounders. Sorry about that. I just dropped my earphone. I needed, what I had was, at the time that I got the green light to do the book, I had two-tone, a 40, and about 630s. And although I've got a book which is as much about the funny stories as the fishing, I felt I didn't have enough 30 pounders. Now, we're going back to a time when these super waters weren't about.
Yeah.
And I thought, how the hell am I going to? I want at least 20, 30s in my book. How are you going to do that? I don't know. And Frimley would come up as being quite a consistent water. I thought, well, and it was accessible because you could buy a
Gold
RMC
card.
gold card,
Yeah.
and the only people who could night fish it were the gold carders and the bailiffs. So I thought, so I phoned up Steve Mogford and I said, what's Frimley like? So I'm going to do this book. Fucking book, they've got age certificate ratings on them because they're shagging stories. And he said, yeah. I said, is Frimley good for a 30? He said, yeah, it is. He said, but so I got a gold ticket and I went down. Cut a long story short, it turned out that if you fished a swim and you baited it up, the other lads doing nights would leave you alone.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen again. It doesn't happen now because it's a syndicate.
Yeah.
And I was told that if I went in a secret swim and looked for two quote unquote inverted boobs in the tree line, cast between them, pulled it back, you'd have soft silk gravel, fill it in with bait, and if you can get them coming, they'll come every night. Or you could only do 48 hours, right? So then I'd go. So I had an issue. My van was fucked. It was worth 250 quid, and when I break, the wheels would glow red.
Yeah.
So I had to leave my fishing gear in my mate's garage in Kingston on Thames. So I drive down. It wouldn't go more than 50 mile an hour loaded.
Yeah.
So, so I go down there, pick the fishing gear up, wheel it all the way from where the bungalows were over the railway track, and I baited and I baited and I baited. And then I'd fish it for 48 hours, pull off, go to Sandhurst, go to Sea Roof, get a ticket for Sandhurst, do 48, come back to Frimley for 48, and then go home, maybe do some typing for the book or do a week on the agency, whatever, to keep my funds up. Cut a long story short, I got them going. I got the fish coming in. I was putting in 40 kilos of bait a week, something I never do, but that was hemp, corn, boilies, all the mainline liquids and that. And they started coming in. And they told me you'll only ever get a bite in a secret swim 7 in the dark at night. I said, that's a load of bollocks. 6:30 at night, beep, 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 beep. Started getting liners and started going off. So one session, I've gone down there and I've put the bait in, and the first night caught a 27 pounder. When I woke up the next day, my hand had swollen up real bad. And I noticed on the inside of my bivvy this particularly nasty looking spider.
Yeah.
So I took a picture of it. This was in the first book under the section arachnophobia. So I took a picture of it, and I then messaged Ruth and said, I'm not being funny, you ain't got any nasty spiders around here, yeah? I've got a really horrible looking spider in my bivvy, and my hand's swollen up real bad. And of course, that was too much for her to resist, wasn't it? Oh, have you not heard of the black water spider? I'm like, no. She said, Spug, I'm not messing you about. If you start feeling really hot and your hand gets any worse, you're going to go into anaphylactic shock. You need to get down Frimley Hospital and all. So she panicked me big time. And so I phoned up Mogford. I phoned up everyone around there. No one's heard of this spider. No one knows what I'm talking about, blah, blah, blah. The next night, I had my best nights fishing in England ever. We had a 32 pounder at 7:30 at night, common, 30-pound common at 9 o'clock. I had the fish that's on the front of the book, Charlie at 42 pound, and then I had the big fully scaled at 37 in the morning.
Wow.
So 2 of the 18 plus 2 30s in 12 hours.
Yeah.
And my hand's gone down. So then I ring up Ruth. Yeah, she said, I got you there, didn't I? I said, yeah, you did. Anyway, because this was being down at Frimley was all about the book. I then had to pack down, go and get my ticket for Sandhurst. while I was there, we went in the local newsagents and bought some plastic spiders to get pictures of me and her messing about with spiders to tell that story in the book.
Yeah.
There was one picture of us arm in arm like that with her legs in the air going, "Whee!" And I said to her, "Thanks for that. I'm going to announce our engagement in Carp World with that photo." She went, "Yeah, all right, Spug." So I finished, went to Sandhurst, went to Frimley, went back home, and I phoned up Gaz Hood, who's now a
Yeah.
tracker.
Yeah.
He was designing and laying out Carp World at the time, and I said, "Do us a favour, mate. So if I send you a picture of me and Ruth together, can you announce our engagement in Carp World?" He said, "Yeah." I told him the story. I said, "She proper stitched me, but I'm going to fuck her so hard with my fucking retaliation." So Gaz went, "Yeah, no worries." So anyway, cut a long story short, Cartwell's come out, take a picture like that of me and her arms. She knew nothing about it. She forgot all about it until her dad rang up. Her dad rings the shop up and goes, "What the fucking hell's going on in your life? What's all this? I've got your mother in tears, wants to know why she doesn't know what's going on in your life. Why have you got engaged to that idiot for?" And Ruth's like, "What are you talking about?" She's opened up her copy and there it is. She said, "Dad, it's a wind up, it's a wind up." So it had a good start, but then she got message after message after message, email. It proper bombarded her with congratulations, probably a few going, "Silly fucker." But then the ultimate crowning moment of glory was she used to be quite tied in with Eco,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah. I
Chile's
remember
English
Chile. Yeah.
carp. Yeah. Now, because he couldn't control his temper at meetings, they'd send Ruth, and she had a government-based meeting with MAF and all the rest of it. There's a load of them around the table. They're talking about fish movements and logistics and stocks and law. Then, right at the end of it, out comes a bottle of champagne and a bunch of flowers, and they all started giving her a round of applause to congratulate her on the fucking engagement. To which she, with a very red face, had to explain that it was all a wind up. And it got so bad, it got so out of hand that the next month in Carp World, we had to write a 400 word what had really happened and what the truth was,
Retraction.
just to calm it down. Yeah, I proper got her, I did.
I've got a lot
So
of
it
time for
went on
Ruth.
longer than I thought.
But
Oh, she's brilliant. I absolutely adore her.
yeah, when I officiated the car park for a year, it was that year that Terry went back and everyone was on there. Darren Miles, Pagulatas had just finished. It was a good year to fish it if I didn't fish it in the original heyday, which I had the chance to actually, but I didn't want to fish a lake with bigger fish in than I caught because I wanted to go up through the stages, I got
Yeah,
offered
not
a
like
head.
me.
No, I wanted to catch a 20 and then a 30 and then a 40 and I wanted to do it that way and I think I was fishing Rodney Meadow at the time, and then we got friendly with some lads on there that were just got a ticket for the car park lake, and they were explaining it to me. There's 9 fish in this lake, and I couldn't get my head around it. Like it was 60
Yeah,
quid,
yeah,
60 quid a
proper.
year, I think it was then for the ticket, and uh, they were like, "Oh, so and so's on it, and so and so." I think it was the early days of Terry, probably his first. And I never fished it, and kind of regretted it. They drove down one day, and I was on fish. I didn't want to leave the lake, and I kind of regret not going then because they were all there, and they came back super excited. These two lads that I got friendly with, but. It was another world really, wasn't it, from the fishing we got now. But if people want to buy your book, where can they get it?
Right, okay. So I've got a it's on eBay.
Yep,
I've got a website with all the books explained and everything, www.mikespugredfern.com.
yep,
And we've got 20 copies left of Carpin Mad 3, which is the second book.
yep.
And we're doing a deal for the two of them for 40 quid plus a tenner postage. Actually cost me 12 quid to post that because it comes via courier and it's signed for. So there's 20 opportunities to get both books, and that's nearly 800 pages heading
Brilliant.
that way of just fish and mayhem. Luckily my life's not like that anymore. But yeah, that a lot of people have gone for that. We had about 70 copies left, and we've sold 50 of them in the last few months. So yeah, that's where.
Lovely jubbly. I'm sure you'll spend a few more after this. Mike Spug Redfern.com. I will put a link for it in the bottom of the podcast as well.
Okay, mate.
Will you come back? Give it a month or
Yeah.
two. Let's get a few more of these stories out, get the rest of the book sold. And Mike Spug, thank you for joining us on the Carpcast.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Cheers.
Check out the website at www.thecarpcast.com. There you'll find extra content, merchandise and lots more to support the show, including our entire back catalogue of free offerings.